Well, what a treat it is today to be welcoming in one of the greats in the world of football, Pro Football Hall of Famer, three-time Super Bowl champ, a Super Bowl MVP, a two-time NFL MVP, a seven-time Pro Bowler. I will say flat out the best lefty quarterback ever. Move over Boomer Esiason and Kenny Stabler. Yes, indeed, Steve Young. But that's not all. Attorney, philanthropist, broadcaster, entrepreneur, husband, father. What haven't you done, Steve? Welcome to the Omni Athlete.
Hey, Rich. Thank you. You're an old friend, and that was my mom's version of the introduction. I appreciate you getting it all in there.
Yes, well, she wanted to pump you up because I know confidence is an issue sometimes, right?
I know.
Hey, I got to ask you.
There was a day, Rich.
Yeah, sure. That's what I want to go to right out of the gate. You were at the Tampa Bay Bucks, young stud quarterback, but some said he's a number one pick. He's a bust. You flash forward 30 years later, you got a bronze bust in Canton, Ohio. And how could you encapsulate that magical journey from not rags to riches, but certainly from the most trying to the most celebrated?
Yeah, I think there's fundamentals. There's got to be fundamentals to your ability to do the job. Throwing the football, putting it in accurately, anticipatory throwing, seeing ahead of the game, studying, getting all the data, under control that you have to do as a quarterback, having the opportunities. That's the foundation, right? If you don't have that, you can, I have friends that I grew up in high school that loved sports more than life itself. They would have given anything for an opportunity like I had. And they just didn't, they weren't blessed with things that pro football or pro sports really, kind of fundamentally you have to have. And so I think I'm grateful that some of those fundamentals I did have. And then it was just a matter, and that doesn't matter, you can have those fundamentals and still come up a lot short. And so for me, it was having the opportunity, having the kind of fundamental ability. And then it was just, a lot of stick-to-itiveness, just leaning in. There's so many days and so many hard times and so many moments that are disconcerting or tragic or, people, and especially when you get into a job where you can be on the radio or TV and they follow you on the newspapers and then, you can have all these outlets to find out what people think about you. And every day you get a report card. And my kid's greatest fear is report card day. Can you imagine one every day? And not only just from you to your parents, but to on the radio or on TV and so I think getting all that happening as you don't know how good you are, they think you're lousy, and you just have to keep digging in. And then you have to find people that'll spend time with you to teach you. On and on. I think then some breaks. You had people that you need things to bounce your way. I had two brothers that were much more qualified coming out of high school to play quarterback than I was. And the ball didn't bounce their way. They didn't get the breaks, and they played a little bit in college, but certainly as qualified as me to play. And so you need some of that too. That all worked out. So there's a book in there, Rich. I don't know. Maybe someone should write it. Or maybe I did. Forget it.
Yeah, maybe you did. Behind the Spiral. We'll get into that in a little bit. But you're 18 years old, 19 years old. You're at BYU. You're 8th on the depth chart, despite a heralded high school career in Connecticut, All-Stater. 8th on the depth chart. You're not even traveling with the team. You're like the afterthought of afterthoughts. Yet you knuckle down. And I know your dad's nickname was Grit, and he was a BYU running back star. Did you borrow or incorporate his determination and you channel that drive to rise above the obstacles that you were facing?
I think yes, and it was a challenge, and there's a lot of times I wanted to quit, and if he would have let me quit, if my dad, I called a couple of times and said, "Look, Dad, I don't want to be here. They don't know my name. They don't care about me. Why am I messing with this?" And if he would have said, "Yeah, you're right, son. Just don't worry about it. They lied to you, or they should have treated you better, or they should be friendly or kinder or, whatever. Just come home. I would have gone home. I would have at that point in my life, which is sad to admit. I would have felt guilty. Maybe I would have come back fast. I don't know, save the day. I don't know. But I wanted to go home. And my dad said, no way. And so I stuck it out. And in that interim between August of 1980 and December of 1980, I was able to witness Jim McMahon play quarterback, and I figured out how to throw a football. How I got to BYU playing quarterback without knowing how to throw a football, that's a whole other story. But in that time, I figured out how to throw a ball. And once I learned how to throw a ball, it was as if the heavens opened, and the excitement level of being able to grab a football and just rip it and put it right where I wanted to was a new talent, like out of nowhere. Had no idea. Before that, I tried to roll it off my hand and I'm full all over the place. I had no idea. There was a lot of anxiety around throwing the ball in high school and then as a freshman in college. And all of a sudden, it just changed my confidence level, changed my ability to think that I could do something really important in football. Just everything changed when I learned how to throw a ball. It sounds stupid. Why didn't you learn that when you were 10 years old? Or why didn't someone tell you? I can't explain it, but I learned it then, and it made all the difference.
I want to get into the mindful aspects of that. So here you are facing all these daunting challenges, 3,000 miles from home as a teenager, feeling what you would later describe as the separation anxiety. But you persevered. And can you just talk about the consciousness of that decision, the determination? What is it that drove you?
Well, I think I'd seen great players before me, and if I played somewhere where lousy quarterbacks and they were getting booed, and I don't know if it would have changed my mental toughness, but I think the expectations were so high that I didn't ever feel like I could rest. I never felt like I could. That's good enough, or hey, that's we're doing fine, or never. And I think that having that kind of constantly in the back of your mind that nothing's enough keeps you moving. No matter in that way, as long as you don't get to have the people's opinions and the things that the naysayers trying to beat you down. As long as that doesn't happen, rest of it is you better get pedaling. You better pedal fast because you got some great shoes to fill. I think that was one of the most important things. Is I got to BYU after Gifford Nielsen and Jim McMahon, two All-Americans back to back, and I was like, okay, so what are you? Who are you? And what do you have to give? And if you think about how I got to where you described as Hall of Fame bust, okay, how do we get there? Well, part of it's the fact that I followed All-Americans and they were really good. And, that probably pushed me further than I ever thought I could be pushed in many ways.
Yeah, I'm curious about, it sounds like it was more inspiration than motivation. If motivation is being pushed and inspiration is being inspired and reaching, how would you characterize your career?
Yeah, I was inspired. I think that's the way to think about it in that way. I hadn't really thought about that before, but I was inspired by what I'd seen, and I wanted to emulate it. I wanted to be like that. I don't think I said to myself, I want to be All-American, but I said I want to be that good, And now that I'd knew how to throw a football, I thought maybe I could be that good. So I think that's part of it too, is there's like some faint voice in the back of your head that goes, you really can do this. Like, it's possible. It's not a loud voice, but, at that point in my life, I'd seen greatness. And Dan Marino I was recruited to Army my senior year in high school. And I went up for a weekend trip to Army to see, and they played Pitt. And Dan Marino was a year older than me. So he was a rookie, a freshman, a starter for Pitt, famously, right? And I remember standing on the sidelines on the Army sidelines watching Dan Marino throw a 30-yard laser to the sidelines right in front of me. And I'm like, whoa, I got the wrong job. I got to rethink this football thing. I got to think about baseball. So I have, I needed inspiration and a belief that I could actually do it, because I'd seen what Dan Marino looked like. I knew that wasn't me at that point.
You talk about the mental side of mastery. So there you are, so determined to learn how to throw a ball. And I understand you threw thousands and thousands of footballs your freshman year to get on the map. And obviously that led to your ascension as you developed the mastery. But just talk about the mindful side of the mastery and the repetition and the practice and all that went into taking you from that rough cut diamond into something.
Yeah. There's a quality. I noticed that genetics, and my wife is really big on, getting your genetic testing and epigenetics and all the things that we're learning around DNA and what's inside of you, like what drives people. And she's telling me the other day that they're doing this study around the worldwide kind of data that's coming in from all the DNA to figure out that there's probably a DNA marker for hard work. And I was like, really? Like, yeah, guys, there's a marker for DNA and I thought, intuitively, that's my experience, is that there's something inside of people, different things, different situations. But I noticed there were better athletes that I knew that didn't care enough. And so that was it. They just moved on to other things. I just cared a lot. It meant a lot to me. And I worked, and maybe they're going to prove that it was actually just part of, who I was, kind of from the ground up, that I was a hard worker, because I loved, the challenge, and I was drawn to it. And in some ways, the harder the challenge, the bigger the mountain, the more I wanted to climb it. And my dad has always joked, even the other day he said it, he goes, "You still love 3rd and 10, And I was like, Dad, I don't love 3rd and 10. I think I'm drawn to it. I think it's not a love. But, and I think that explains a lot of those early years about trying to make a way for yourself. And, because you're sloppy, you don't know what you're doing. You don't have all that, success behind you to kind of draw on. You don't have anything in the bank to hold, to emotionally to say that I've done this before. You're really raw. And how do you in that raw moment kind of find your way through it? And I think that people say, well, it's hard work, it's stick-to-itiveness, it's relentlessness, and I all of that. And you want to say, well, why were you able to do that? And certainly my dad expected it. I expected it. People around me were coaching me gave me the sense that I could be really good. And I just never looked up. In many ways, I mean, maybe the climbing metaphor is the best idea. It's like, I never looked down, I never looked up. I just kept climbing every day. And pretty soon, holy cow, I'm 30,000 feet in the air.
There you go. Keep your nose to the grindstone, as it were, and in your DNA to just be dogged in your determination. How about whether it was a meditation or creative visualization or the mental aspect of achieving? Talk a little bit about how you went through that process from the rough outsider, or the guy on the fringe to the guy in the spotlight.
Yeah. I've always said this. It's a little different than a lot of people who think that they've got expertise in this area. I looked at it as, I was doing the nursery story where the little train that could, I think I can, and he just kept saying it, right? And he climbed the mountain. I remember reading it to my kids myself. I always said that it was the opposite for me. I would say, I don't think I can, but it was actually a driving force. And it was just, I don't know why. And maybe that was actually repeating some mantra that, like, in some ways, I don't think I can was a safety valve. And so I had that in my pocket so that I could go go after it. I don't need everyone's emotions and psychology is a little different, but I was not the guy that was saying, oh yes, I'm sure I'm going to get there. I'm sure I'm going to get there. I kind of did the opposite. I was like, there's no way I'm going to get there. There's no way I'm going to get there. And it's how it drove me. And so it doesn't matter what drives you.
Right. As long as you're driven.
Yeah. As long as you're
right.
As long as you're
so
driven.
you're saying
right.
it was more, so you're saying it was more the fear of failure than the pursuit of success.
But to me, it's semantical. It really is. It's just it. And I would agree with that. But I don't want people to feel like, because fear of failure or fear of not succeeding or belief that you're going to succeed, I think they're all in the same family, and you just describe it however you want to describe it. But something drives you to be excellent, to extend yourself. And so people say, well, you're fear-based. I was like, I don't know if I wasn't afraid, but the word is used to kind of create an image that you're running from something. And I don't really care what your incentive is. The incentive is the end result is hard work and really a belief that you're going to do something you never thought about doing before. So I'm not really the source, as long as it's not abuse. Someone's hitting you with a stick or, something that's just not appropriate. But as long as it's something that is kind of naturally driving you forward, describe it however you want. And, you can try to dissect it and say, oh, that means that you were afraid to fail, or you believe that you succeed. I still believe I've noticed that a lot of people that are very bombastic and very aggressive. I'm the greatest. I'll be the greatest. You watch. I think underneath it is the same thing. I don't think that they know that. I think they're saying it because they need to create that space to go climb into. Or maybe I was making the space behind me to say, don't ever back up. Whatever it is, you gotta move forward.
Whatever would fuel the fire. So you joined the 49ers, and Bill Walsh is telling you Joe Montana's on his last legs, and it's going to be your show, kid. And go back to 1987 when we both joined the 49ers, me as the talk show host, you as the heir apparent. And apparently it didn't work out the way you envisioned.
No. Well, envisioned, it was what Bill told me. Bill was a salesman, and he had told me, look, I was in Tampa. It was hard, but I was learning. I had really people I trusted that were coaching me say, you can do this. This is not the easiest place in Tampa to do it. It's not but don't let the lack of success fool you. You could do this. And so I had a lot of confidence coming out of that Tampa Bay experience. And so, but I loved playing. I loved grinding it out, and it was hard. And, especially, we weren't very good. But I was not looking to come and hold a clipboard for Joe Montana. That I just made that very clear. I don't want to do that. I'd much rather go back to law school than go sit and watch. That was just my young mindset, 22-year-old mindset. I was just dumb, or maybe it was 23 by then, or even 24. And so I told Bill, look, I don't want to sit. I want to play. He goes, don't worry. Joe's been the best ever, but his second back surgery, and I'm afraid that he's not going to be able to play anymore. And I didn't cheer that at all. I was sad to hear that, that he was struggling. But if there was an opportunity, because of Joe's health, that I could play, I'm all in. And that was how we forged the relationship between Bill and I. And I tell that funny story where the first practice, I'm out there, and then Joe comes running out, and the first thing I think to myself is, he doesn't look really hurt. And then you and I witnessed, and we lived it all out for the next 4 or 5 years. But Joe forgot to tell Bill maybe that the back was not as bad as he thought.
Well, maybe he was inspired by your presence or motivated.
Hey, I always said through the next 5 years, the winner of it all were the 49ers, because they got the best of both of us. I mean, they got every inch of the both of us, and that's probably a good thing maybe that's what Bill's the idiot savant, that he knew better, that I would get all this this greatness out of these guys.
Well, two Hall of Famers, two alpha dogs vying for the same bone, that same prize. And it was, as you described for many years later, an awkward situation. Yet, do you feel that you were able to be your best because of Joe's legacy lurking or his presence?
There was a transition, Rich. It was, I had to grow through that. The fact is that seeing it is empowering. I hated watching it. I hated, but watching was the ultimate empowerment to show me this is what it looks like. This is the expectation. This is, you want to be great? Well, then this is what it is. And so that empowerment was really important. And there was a, before 1991-ish, I need to be Joe Montana. I need to be better. I need to be great. I got to live up to his expectations. People will say you're not as good. And the comparisons, I just lived that life daily. And then through a number of, experiences I had, I really learned a fundamental way to look at the world differently. And it really wasn't about the comparisons. And it really was about how good can you get? Are you willing to take a risk to go behind Joe Montana and be the next guy in line and play and take the risk that you're not as good as you think you are, or you're not going to be what you hope to be. But if you'll take that risk, let's make it a challenge that you're not going to care what anyone else did. I'm going to go find out how good I can get. And it really became it's not a selfish, but it's an expression, because you can be seeking self-improvement and really self-focused on, laser focused on self-improvement and still be a great teammate, be a great leader. You can do all those things, but your motivation is different. My motivation is not to have anyone say to me, oh, you're as good as Joe, or you're doing just as good, or Joe. Like, it became much more about, look, how good can I get? And I think it relieved and changed the way that I approached it and really helped me expand. That's when after 1991, not only did I get my opportunity, but I also it just opened up the vistas for a lot less pressure and a lot less weight to carry around. And now the weight was really just kind of self-inflicted in a positive way. I could take something that was, dragging me down, and I suddenly turned all that around and became something that was an impetus forward.
You shared with me the epiphany moment on the plane ride back from Utah when you were in law school, and you happenstance sitting next to Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And he shared some amazing insights. And I'd love you to recount that story, because it sounds like that was a massive turning point in your career and your life.
Yeah, it really was. I had dug myself a really deep pit of despair. It was mid-season 91. It's my season. Joe was hurt, and I was now in charge, and everything was about the fact that the 49ers were not nearly as good as when Joe was here and Steve, and everything was my fault. And there was a funny headline in the San Francisco Chronicle in mid-October, the Gulf War had broken out in the Middle East, and the front page above the fold was a headline, "The Gulf War, it's Steve Young's fault." And it was kind of be a joke, like everyone's laughing because everything was my fault, and so might as well be the Gulf War. It was supposed to be funny, but I remember it being just maybe the final, like just this the straw on the camel, just another way. It's like, oh, and I kind of become full of despair and depression and it's not fair, and I'm doing everything I can and nothing's good enough, and no one else, and there's too many people that are underinvested, and I'm overinvested, and everyone else is just standing around, and just all this self-pity, just everything you can imagine, Rich. It's just human nature, right? All the big pile of crap that you make, and you dig a pit and you just fall into it. That's kind of where I was. And I was flying back. I took a day off in between 2 games, late October. And I was flying back and ran into Steve Covey. Stephen, he was famous for, like you said, the 7 Habits books. I'd known of him, never met him, and he goes, "How you doing?" And everything I just told you, I told him, 10 times. And at the end of it, he says, Well, Steve, thanks. I appreciate that perspective. Totally understand it. I mean, first of all, I don't know if you know this, but science has proven that any group of people of more than 7, the interaction it devolves geometrically. So that by the time you get to 11, it's impossible to do things, efficiently. And I'm like, oh, see, that explains that. The sport is crazy, too many people. And he says, but wait, there's more. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions? I go, yeah, great. He goes, the owner, Eddie DeBartolo, I've heard of him. Tell me about him. And I told him, oh, Eddie, he's the first guy that ever brought together players and owners and tried to build a bridge and how you treat players. And he's ahead of the game and successful, So I just told him all about Eddie DeBartolo. And he goes, oh my gosh, I'd like to meet him. He probably has a lot of really cool ideas. I go, yeah, he is. And then Bill Walsh, he's the best. Tell me about Bill Walsh? I go, oh my gosh. He's generations ahead. By this time, he was the consultant for the 49ers. And tell me about Bill and all what he's done for the 49ers. I told him everything, and generations ahead, and how you treat people, and how you coach, and how you call plays, and how you travel, and how you eat, and all the stuff that you and I experienced, Rich. And he goes, I'd love to meet Bill Walsh. That'd be awesome. It seems like a guy that I could learn a lot from. He goes, one more question. Joe Montana's on the team, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's 3/4 of the problem. And he goes, but if you needed to go see Joe, and ask him a question, if you had, some kind of mentoring question that you could go and ask him, could you do it? Would he answer? Oh yeah, he would answer. If I asked him a question, he'd answer it for sure. As a mentor, yeah. He goes, wow, that's got to be empowering. And I remember thinking, well, not really right now, because I've got myself in a big hole, and I don't know that it really is that empowering. So after he set it all up, he says, I travel the world trying to develop a repertoire of basic values and fundamental ways of approaching difficult conversations, different perspectives, difficult situations with groups of people and corporations and families and, any organizations. And I always look for any of these organizations that have figured out a way to build a platform for people to see how good they can get. And then I try to amplify all these great qualities, and I write books about them. And that's what I'm always looking for. And I got to be honest with you, Steve, as I've listened to you, totally hear you, see how difficult it is. I got to tell you, I don't know that I've ever come across, the way you explain it, a better platform in the world for someone to stand on top of and iterate and find out how good they are going to get. I remember at that moment, I'm like, I'm in the pit of despair. I piled all the rocks on me. I made it just miserable as possible. And all of a sudden, this guy's telling me, you're actually the luckiest man alive. And I remember thinking to myself, isn't that something? That he's right. He's right. I've screwed this up. I've allowed myself and all the natural human reactions to put myself in a real pit of despair. And I've missed what he's now describing as one of the greatest opportunities. He goes, and then he stops, he goes, Steve, let me ask you one last question. And he's like Yoda, with the finger, and he's looking around, and he's like, do you want to see how good you can get? Because not everybody does. Scary. Do you? I remember thinking, yeah, I do. He goes, then go. And I remember I got off that plane and ran down and prayed I hadn't lost my job to Steve Bono and complained and moaned my way. And, and I tell people that from that day, just for context, that was mid-season, late mid-season of 91. 92, I'm the NFL MVP. And I'm like, well, how did that happen? Well, I guarantee you a big piece of the puzzle was not that self-afflicted human being, but somebody who had figured out and been given the opportunity to see things as it truly was a great opportunity. So that's that long story. So sorry about that.
That's a great one. So it was about gratitude and maybe letting go of some of the fears and anxieties and being more excited about the opportunity and what was all around you. The best coach, the best owner, the best quarterback in front of you, mentoring or guiding or in some way inspiring you. It sounded like it was just a perspective shift. It just this
yeah. Well, it was
drastic
more.
shift.
It was really seeing the truth. You know, you want to. I mean, do you want to see how good you can get?
Right.
I mean, ask anybody. That's why he was out promoting organizations, companies, places where he could, show people like this is how you create these kind of organizations. This is how you create these kind of environments, so people can go iterate and find out how good they can be. And for me to see that I was sitting on top of one of the greatest ones ever was just super humbling and grateful that I didn't completely blow it. Because how many times have we blown it?
Sure.
How many times have we blown? It could be a marriage. It could be relationships. It could be a job at work. It could be, how many times have we blown it because of self-pity and not seeing kind of a greater perspective of what can be accomplished in the moment. And so I'm grateful I'll always be grateful to Steve Covey. They're dedicating the School of Business at the Utah State University. I'm speaking November 2nd. That this building they're dedicating to Stephen Covey, and they've asked me to come speak basically based on this interaction we had on the plane.
That's great. Well, Bill Walsh used to talk about the daunting challenge of getting to the Super Bowl, and he said there was a big boulder in front of the road, and instead of everyone trying to push the boulder out of the way, keep chipping away at it until it's a bunch of little rocks, and then run over it. I mean, just share some of the beauty and the genius of Bill Walsh as it related to your evolution as a quarterback and as a man, because he was instrumental in so many ways to your development.
Yeah, I think that's very true. For some of it's football centric, just tactically, technically. I used to run around a lot and use my natural abilities. And I remember one day telling me, Steve, no one knows where you are. Your team needs to know where you are. You need to let them. You got to be where they think you are, so that you can develop a trust. You're breaking their trust every time you start running around. They don't know where you're going to be. And the way he described it really hit me. Like, you're breaking their trust. They trust that you're going to do what they think you're going to do, and when you don't, you break their trust every time. And I remember thinking, wow, I don't want to be not trustworthy, and the way he just had a way of describing situations that was a perfect example, and he had a rep, he could come up with 1,000 ideas about why and how to inspire you to do something, and he used all kinds of techniques to do it. I remember when I'd make mistakes on the field, and he did this a lot for other people, but when I would make a mistake in practice, he would stop practice. And he would go over to Mike Holmgren, and he would just yell at Mike Holmgren at the top of his lungs. Everyone, practice has stopped. Everyone's watching Bill yell at Mike Holmgren about the stupid quarterback that can't make the right mistake and keeps making mistakes, and it's your fault because you're the one that's in charge of making sure that he understands how to do it. And if you don't start doing your job, we're going to find. Well, think about that. Now, everyone's seeing poor Mike Holmgren, getting yelled at. But everyone knows it was me that screwed it up. But he didn't yell. He could have stopped and yelled at me directly and made it personal. And all that goes with that, right? The shame, the embarrassment. Everyone else could use that against you. No, he didn't do that. He let you know that you needed to get this figured out now. But he also deflected it on a person that he now could walk in and laugh with and joke with in a coaching meeting and go, yeah, Mike, that was great, And that was a way that he was able to communicate really hard things without it's like a soft punch rather than, one with a knife on the end. And just little things like that I thought he was just naturally always looking to inspire no matter what and in any situation, and never took the cheap way. Because as a head coach or the head of any CEO or the head of whatever it is, whatever empowerment you have, most people will take the cheap way in a moment of, conflict or despair or pressure or anything else. They immediately pick up the big stick and they just start swinging, right? Because they can. And that's human nature. And Bill just worked against human nature in all those ways to find unique ways that aren't necessarily about just having a big stick because I'm the greatest coach in football, and so I can scream at you, I can do whatever I want. I'm going to find unique ways to inspire you. I thought it was, it's inspiring me even today, because it's not even about head coaching. It's not about, like, just as a parent, can I parent like Bill Walsh coached? Can I find ways to inspire rather than, I have a big stick. You're my kid. You don't have any money. You don't have a car. You don't have anything. And so I can use that and just kind of beat you down, or I can find incentive, kind of unique ways to inspire rather than require. That's a good way to say it. I don't know. I've heard that somewhere. So I don't know who to give credit for that one, but it always made sense to me.
That's a good one. You use the trust word in Covey's book. He said, trust is the glue of life. And, it impacts us in so many ways, relationships, players, teammates, spouses, whatever. But you, replacing Joe Montana, had to develop the trust of your teammates. Daunting challenge in and of itself. How did you keep that mental focus, and what was it that carried you to that ability to do it?
Again, I think it was seeing Joe do it. So I knew what it was supposed to look like. It gave me confidence that I wasn't there. Like I could see on film. I'm like, nah, that's not it. And there was a unique quest out there to. I never wanted to do it exactly like he did, because I couldn't. We're different players, different way we did it. But there was fundamentals to how he accomplished it that I knew what that looked like, and so I was always seeking that. I think that's one of the ways. You need a couple of people that are just going to back you no matter what. I had a couple of friends, and Harris Barton and Brett Jones, and guys that just supported me, would watch out for me, work through all the issues of the day. You need some friends around you. It's a hard, lonely life to try to go out there and to excel. There's no necessarily playbook that you might have seen other people do it, but you doing it, you're writing it as we speak. You need some friends, and I think just building on this idea that no matter what happened, no matter how bad it got, no matter what went on, I would never duck. I would never go around. I mean, I know this is metaphorical, but I would always tell myself, just go through it. Just go through it. Just face it. Face the truth. Face the media. Face the action. Don't duck it. Don't make an excuse. There's nothing cheaper than watching somebody under pressure making an excuse. People get it. People know there's 11 guys on the team. People know that it's complicated. People know it's not. You don't need to express that. Like, just take the accountability. And I think that was a big piece to it, because I think over time people really started to believe that I could stand for it. I didn't show any cracks in the. People love to see cracks and then kind of shove something in and see if they can expose it. I think just those are the elements that I think you got to have to kind of face the tip of the spear pressure that happens in the NFL. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think you personified that on the field, and all the frenzy and the fury and the chaos. You were able to rise above or navigate those troubled waters, improvising more often than going by script. Can you talk about how you were able to do that with all the mayhem around you? You were probably the best improv quarterback the league has ever seen. Well,
because it really rings in my mind what I said about Bill Walsh, like, you don't break their trust. And so what happened is, whenever I needed to build a trust with my teammates, that when I did go, it was for a really good reason. So that they could trust that I'd exhausted the opportunity. And so that pushed me to exhaust the opportunity and find every possibility inside the play that we called, so that everyone could know, that Jerry Rice would know, that Brent Jones would know, that John Taylor would know, that Ricky Waters would know, that as you come back to the huddle, if Steve ran with a football, it's because there was nothing there. And you had to build that, because the second they believe that you didn't do like extend and really work to get the ball out of your hands, then it creates this distrust that happens. And I can't express that enough with other guys that could move around. They cause themselves so much damage because they actually do good things, but in the long run damage their relationship with their teammates because they don't trust them. They want to know that you'll do the job. In fact, a lot of times I would come back to the huddle and I'd say, guys, I'm so sorry that had to happen. But I would actually tell them, like, I apologize. I just run for a big first down, or even for 40, even for a touchdown. I'd turn to them like, I'm so sorry I didn't mean for that to have to happen. And so that expression let them know. And I think that's how my improvisation hopefully was super efficient. The idea that you're going to be stopped by NFL defenses. They're good, the best athletes in the world. They're going to beat you. But if they're going to beat me 50% of the time, and now I can make it 25% of the time, then, it's astronomical difference in how efficient you can become as a player. And I think it's ironic. I noticed even 20 years later, and the game has changed dramatically as far as how quarterbacks and their proliferation and the yards and everything else, the efficiency of what was happening with me at that time really, it shows that I was only moving when we didn't have a choice, so I could exhaust everything. And then it was only a positive. It was never a negative. That was my goal. It was never that I was just panicked. I didn't see the open guy. Jerry was open, and where was I? I was running around. And I think that effort to get the most out of both sides really paid off.
You famously said the monkey was off your back after that epic record-setting 6 touchdown pass performance in Super Bowl 29 and the rout of the Chargers in Miami. I was privileged to be on the sideline. It was your shining, glorious moment. Do you think it was more your performance leading up to that and capped by that won over the team? Was it you lobbying for support in a divided locker room at times over Joe or Steve? Who's going to do it? How's it going to go down? I mean, if you're not united as a tribe, as a football team, you're not going to win. And you had to bring that team together. What was the impetus to that?
I think most of it was what I just described, that the easiest thing to do under pressure is to deflect and find mitigation, right? Is to say, oh, well, let me explain why that went badly. And by the way, you turned the wrong way. And by the way, you didn't block that guy. I mean, what I try to do is never, ever, ever do anything but give them a sense that I know I'm responsible in the end, ultimately accountable. And so that there could be mixed affiliations. There could be all kinds of divisions around who's, better liked, but they could never say Steve is going to deflect. Steve's going to not stand for it. And I think that when you play in the NFL, and there's so much heat from the media, from the expectations, from just week to week, guys, I think learned that, I might screw up, I might be lousy, but I'm not going to, you're not going to hear about it other than I got to get better. I think they respond to that. Human beings respond to that. Human beings do not respond to mitigation. They respond to accountability. That's just a fact. And the more accountability you can put into your repertoire instead of mitigation, I learned it first on the field, like in spades. But even in my life today, the more I look to mitigate what's happened and explain, the less inspiring you are. And the more accountability you place in there, and the more, I teach my kids, like, if I could say one, so what do you want your kids to know? I want them to know that they're accountable. Like when you mess up, say, I'm sorry, and I'm going to go fix it. And if I can get people to actually do that, you know what? You're right. I'm responsible, and I'm going to go fix it. Man, the world can be a much better place.
I must say, as a postscript to that triumphant, heroic performance in the Super Bowl, I'm in the hotel lobby in Miami watching Dr. Jim Clint run like Usain Bolt to the elevator to come to your rescue. because you apparently had gotten so excited that you forgot to take fluids and you dehydrated and either passed out or almost worse. You got to tell me, what was that like at that moment? Exaltation, all the relief, all the joy was overwhelming, or what?
No, I think it was just a physical thing. I'd forgotten. It was a hot night in Miami, and it took a lot out of me, and I just forgot to drink water, and just got dehydrated. And then once I got hydrated, I was fine. So I was just like, I think I was super excited about the moment, and it just shows you that you can get lost in the when they say you get lost in the moment. I certainly got lost in the moment.
Well, I'm glad you pulled through, because you scared a lot of people that night.
No, something like, I mean, they try to create drama when there's no drama.
Okay. Well, we'll end on a high note. So all the achievements that you've had, and now a proud father of 4, rightly, wrongly, unfortunately or not, you don't have the next great Steve Young quarterback, or your sons are not in that realm. Football in the future, would you recommend it for young men today, given what we now know about the dangers? Your career was cut short by a concussion.
Yeah.
So much concern about CTE and the like.
Yeah. My instinct is that well-coached, proper training especially for high schoolers, I think there's a lot. It's worth the risks. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have bad knees and come out of high school with, joint problems and things. That football is a risky business. But as far as for me, if my kids wanted to play in high school, I'd say for sure. College, it gets, if they want to play linebacker for 10 years or they want to play running back, I think science is going to help us get a better sense of it. But my reflexive instinct is like, not to say, never play. There's so many wonderful things that football can teach if it's well coached and properly taught. I do think that kids should play flag until they get to high school, so they know the game, they understand the ins and outs. They're well skilled when they finally put the pads on. That's what that's kind of my 2 cents. But I think there's something wonderful about what high school football can do. And I remember when I went to the Hall of Fame, my first thoughts were high school. I don't know why, it's just strange. And they announced, Steve, you've gone to the Hall of Fame. I started to cry and think about my high school teammates. It's weird. But I think that was probably indicative of the experience that you can have in high school. So, bad coaches, bad techniques, bad trainers and medical help, and then no, don't run, get away. But well coached, well taught, good people around you, I think it's fine.
What a pleasure this has been, Steve. Great catching up with you, and I'm so happy that the success you had on the field, which is a little foreshadowing in the rest of your life, and continued success. You are the epitome of the omni athlete who has combined the mental, spiritual, consciousness side with the physical prowess, and it's been a blast.
Well, Rich, we should have spent 45 minutes just talking about you and I together, trying to figure out how we're going to make it through our respective lives, and how hard it was, and the risks and the challenges. And you've been a good friend. I appreciate you. It's fun to join you for these few minutes, and you'll be a lifelong friend of mine. I appreciate you very much, Rich.
Awesome. All the best, buddy. Thanks again for your time.
Okay, buddy. Take care.
Hey, what is up, guys? Thank you for watching another episode of Omni Athlete. Please go like and subscribe to our podcast. That is our goal right now, is just to build this community as big as we possibly can, and we need your help to do it. So like and subscribe, share our content, guys. If this content adds any value to your world that helps you perform, connect, go deeper, go wider, whatever it is that it does for you, if it provides value, all we ask is that you share our content and help grow this community. We can't accomplish our goal of elevating global consciousness through sport without you. You are an integral part of this mission and this purpose, and we need your help. So please go like, subscribe, and share our content, and continue to help us build and grow this community that is truly motivated to not just elevate consciousness, but elevate and shift the very culture of sport, so that we can truly experience the athletic experience in a brand new and energizing way for so many people, guys. So thank you, and please like and subscribe. Until next time.